try and get back to doing these lives again. I used to do them for a long while and then I stopped. I can't think why I stopped because you guys gave me a lot of feedback that you liked them and I enjoyed doing them, but maybe life got in the way. So this morning I wanted to talk about something because I am obsessed with conversations. Obsessed with conversations. And it's because all of my success in life, everything that's kind of taken me to a new place, helped me go further, has all come from a conversation on social media. And I know that sounds really strange, but well, let me tell you a little bit first, and then I'll tell you about what I'm advocating you to do. So I don't like networking events. I don't like the weird awkwardness of all that stuff, right? So I would say I'm a bit introverted socially. So that explains why when I was doing sales, I didn't like cold calling. I kind of avoided it. I used email and social media. So in one sense, social media has been like my outlet of how I can be me. Anyway, so I don't like doing that stuff. So I've always leaned towards email or social media, just generally because that's kind of my shtick and fits how I feel, where I feel more comfortable. But conversations can change your life, and I've had moments in my life where conversations have happened that have been kind of properly life-changing for me. And sometimes when I'm working with a client, they'll say, I only want to talk to qualified leads. And by that, they mean, they've got budget, they've got express interest in the product. It's like actually they want to know more about our services. And I get it. If you've got to sell stuff, you want to talk to people who are interested to buy. But my experience of life has been some of the biggest opportunities. I mean, money here, not just like, oh, this was nice, have come from random conversations. People who had no decision-making capability, people who had no authority, people who weren't looking for something, have been some of the most life-changing opportunities I've had. And I want to share a couple with you because there's something you can take out of these. So I didn't start on LinkedIn. I started on Facebook and Twitter, and I kind of abandoned those, and now I'm bringing them back. That was a mistake to abandon them, but I kind of abandoned them and went all in on LinkedIn. But my biggest opportunity, one of the opportunities that kind of changed the direction was somebody seeing me sharing my plans for my business and stuff on Twitter, right? Now, I'll tell you a LinkedIn example in a moment. Literally, I was just sharing what my vision and plan was for the next few years, just randomly tweeting it out. And somebody found it interesting, right? Somebody found it interesting. So that guy at the time was not in a budget making decision, not in any senior decision making thing, but he was curious about what I'd said and what I'd shared, and dropped me a message and said, hey, be good to know more about what you're up to. And it wasn't any big grand, interest in buying anything. It was just curious, interests overlapping. So we had this intro call. It was a nice enough call. And here's the lesson for you here in a minute. And then that same guy turned around to me and said, do you want to come and meet my boss for coffee? And at this point, there was no expression of interest in services or buying anything, nothing. And so we said, yeah, I'll meet for coffee. And it was a 2-hour drive, by the way, for this coffee, 2-hour drive. And at the time I was thinking, oh, I can't really afford to waste 2 hours doing this, especially if it's just going to be a chit chat and get nowhere. But so I was on the fence of like, should I just cancel this? Because like, one, I don't like the whole weirdness of meeting people in real life, but it's weird, that, isn't it? Weirdness of meeting people in real life. Surely it should be weird meeting people online. Anyway, so I was half going to cancel it because I was like, you know, it might come to nothing and I've wasted a day basically. But I went, had a nice coffee, nice conversation. And as I thought, came away, no opportunity, no nothing. And thought, oh, what a waste of time. Then a week later, the guy whose boss I met called me up and said, it was really interesting, some of the things you shared in that discussion. And we'd never thought about those things before. Anyway, I was sharing it with my boss. And he wants to meet you in Plymouth. So would you come down and meet him in Plymouth? So now this is a 4-hour drive. Well, 5 hours technically, 5 hours. So I think, okay. So again, on the fence of, is this a massive waste of time? And I didn't have money to burn, but I decided to go. Went, had a nice day, really interesting conversations, the works. And then nothing. And then a week later, because we were sharing ideas and talking about stuff generally. A week later, phone call again. Our CEO, who you met actually in Plymouth, was really intrigued by what your feedback on some of the things that we were talking about. He wants you to come and present a plan to our global board to implement all that stuff you talked about. I was like, what? So, yeah. So within basically from about a week to 2 weeks, by week 3, I was in the Middle East presenting to a board of a television company about some discussions I'd had in Plymouth and in Newcastle. Part of the reason I'm in Plymouth and I live in Plymouth and Maverick, headquartered in the UK, is in Plymouth, is because of that encounter. So, and then I go into this board meeting, present a plan, and I stupidly, this is what most solopreneurs do, by the way, stupidly did not think up how much I would charge. I didn't think about it. The end of that board meeting, there was a few questions and stuff like that. And then they said, so how much is this going to cost us? How much is it going to cost us to get you on board? And I had honestly never thought about that price. I didn't thought about it. And I was like, bearing in mind, I'm the son of a coal miner, right? So I'm the son of a coal miner. At this point, that flight to Israel, that flight to the Middle East was the longest flight I'd ever done in my life. The only other place I'd been further than that was I'd been to Italy. So I'm now in the Middle East talking to a global board, never done that before. And they asked me how much. And in my head, here's what I do. I think up a price of what I'd be happy with and then put a bit more on. That's how I thought about it. And I just blurted the number out. I just went, £8,000 a month. And to me, that was a lot of money at the time. It was a huge amount of money. And they went, done. And I was like, what? So, and then I immediately knew one thing. That price was very good. That was very cheap. They expected more. And that was my first lesson in selling on value. But mentally, my value wasn't right. To the work I was doing, that value wasn't right. And it turned out that that project that I worked on raised about 11 million. And I said, basically 100 grand a year. That's when That's when I realized the power of a conversation. That literally just having conversations with people on social media, you have no idea the influence of the people you're talking to. And sure, you don't want to waste your time, but if I'd have evaluated that initial conversation, that first conversation where somebody said, "Hey, I see interest in I'd love to chat to you about it." If I'd have gone, well, are they the right decision maker? Do they have buying responsibility? I'd have dismissed it. And that moment, actually, if I look back, literally went and changed the course of my life. Yeah. But that moment changed it. And it was all from a conversation that on paper looked pointless. And that's when I started to realize and started to really see that somebody's job title does not necessarily indicate their influence. And in the years since that, I've seen people who on job title basis have no power, but they have a ton of influence. And so I called this live today, this morning, you're one conversation away from changing your life. And it's true to say your network is your net worth. And I know it's cheesy. But I've experienced this scenario of one conversation change it, like random conversations from social media, doing that more than once. In the pandemic, there was this, the pandemic, our business is very much, we got in-person training events, we got online, but online wasn't as big a deal for us pre-pandemic. So online, we had to go online, and I'm sharing stuff, and somebody messages me, inbound lead, if you'd call it that, an inbound lead messages me to ask me a question. Again, not the right persona, not somebody with budget ability or anything like that. Messages me to ask it a question. I have a conversation with them, and it's a nice conversation, but it's a bit loose. There's not really a pricing structure there or anything like that. And we have a conversation. And then in the end, we move our training course for salespeople online. And we do a digital version and a live version. And that conversation back and forth ended up with him buying a 200 quid training course. And I spent a lot of time on that. 2 weeks later, he loved the course so much, he went back to his boss and said, we should get everybody on this. And I've done 18 grand in sales. And then they do all that course and they ask, can you help us more? And then they spend 160,000 quid. And that customer spent nearly £1 million with me now. One conversation. But on paper, they did not match my ICP in the slightest. And we forget that people have influence beyond their title. People can advocate for us. People can introduce us. And so whilst our focus obviously is on sell, and we want clients and we want all of that stuff, and we do get focused on followers and growing our network and getting more reach and impressions, and there's nothing wrong with all of those things. If it's going to help you achieve your bigger business goals, there's nothing wrong with them. There's also the reality that you need to create space for building relationships and exploring conversations that may seem pointless. Because if I look at my 11 years of running Maverick as a business rather than being a solopreneur. Maverick has existed for a long time, but it was only really in 2017-ish, 2016-ish, that Maverick became a real proper thing. All the way through my journey, there has been these, you could call them chance encounters. Well, they're chance encounters because I was more open to talking to people. And I think the danger we've got right now is that we're so eager to get clients and make money. And I'm going to conflict myself in a second, that we're not open to exploring random conversations. And some of those random conversations are life-changing. Now, why am I contradicting myself? All of our front of house, all of the things that we're doing should be for our buyer personas. Our content, our profile, our connection growth, all of that stuff is obviously focused on the people we want to reach, we want to help, we want to become clients. But what I'm saying is my experience has been some of the people where they've found my content or they've been to something, they've heard about me from somewhere, even though they're random and they don't seem qualified or the right people or whatever, there has been a pattern that those things, when those things come along, they're usually amazing opportunities. That's my experience. Now, sure, have I had some of those random conversations and they've gone absolutely nowhere and I think that was an absolute waste of time? Yeah. But the ROI of being open to them things outweighs the wasted time. And I know that sounds really strange because most of the time I'm saying to you, just talk to the people who matter. But when those random conversations start to happen, you never know where they'll go. And one might be an absolute waste of time. And the next one might be a £500,000 opportunity. So embrace and look for and don't dismiss those conversations. But I'd argue one of your main strategies anyway on social media should be to just get in conversation with people. I've had conversations with people where they said, we're not looking for anything at the moment. And it's not because I'm trying to sales twist their arm or anything. I just talk to them and share tidbits of advice with no real agenda, because they've already told me they don't have budget, they're not looking to buy anything, it's not on their agenda right now. And I'm not going on there going, I wonder if I can change their mind. I'll just go on the conversation because you don't know where they might go. And I've had people change their minds. I've had people change their minds on calls and say, yeah, I think we can make budget for this. Not because of my sales skill, just because we've had a good conversation. I've also had people come back 6 months later, a year later, 2 years later and go, do you know what? I think we are going to do that stuff that you talked about. And now I'm the go-to person for them because I had the first conversation. And in sales, salespeople know this, that if you get an inquiry, the deal usually goes to the first person the prospect speaks to. So if the prospect contacts you and contacts somebody else and they get in first, it's more likely they will win the deal than you. So just having conversations, I encourage you. Yes, you need a plan that you can predict. You can't predict a random conversation that's going to, make you, £500,000 or whatever. You can't do that. But you can allocate space for them. You can allocate space for them. You can make it part of your strategy that you will just have conversations with people who are the right people and people who are the wrong people, because you don't know where they're going to go. But I would argue that most people on social media, most people on LinkedIn are trying to find the buyers. There's the stat that goes round. 97% of your market aren't looking to buy what you've got to offer right now. They're just not ready yet. 97% are not in a place to buy right now. And 3% of the market are. It's a stat that everybody quotes, it's a universal kind of stat. It'll be a little bit different in different industries, but it generally holds true that only about 3% of people are in the right place, whether that be mental place, budget place, problem place, to buy now, actively looking to buy. 97% of them aren't. So most of what we do, most of what we're trying to do is find and convert the 3%. But I'd argue that if you get conversations with people who are in the 97, they're going to help you 6 months down the line, 12 months down the line, 2 years down the line. So sure, we want the leads who are ready to buy right now. One of the reasons I built an email list, and I've been building it for years, is I've known that this 3%, 97% thing. And if I really want to be the first choice for people, I have to be the top of mind for them, not just in the feed, but actually the person they trust the most. And that's about conversations. That's about nurturing those relationships. That's about building trust. And I'd encourage you, don't think about, every day, every single day, I get somebody message me saying that they can send out 1,000 emails for me and get me 10 appointments. That kind of numbers game, to a degree, hear me carefully here, that kind of numbers game to a degree works. If you send 1,000 messages, the law of averages, yeah. So we're just playing odds here. It's not skill or strategy, it's odds. If you send 1,000 messages, you're going to get some bites, right? That's not me advocating you do this. There's whole business models built on this. And there's people who make money from convincing you to do this. And it is just, if we hit enough people up, something's got to work. That's how it works. So there's whole people who do this. And every week I get people messaging me, because their targeting so good, messaging me, offering to send messages for me to get me 10 calls in my diary a month by sending 1,000 or 5,000 messages on social media or on LinkedIn. 5,000 to get 10 meetings. It's insane. And that whole strategy is just based on, can we find the 3%? But here's what most people don't consider. The majority of those things won't close because there's no trust. There's no relationship. And so often those calls you get from that kind of impersonal approach, they don't convert. They don't convert. You need really strong sales skills to convert a sales call that's coming cold, where you've hit them up and they've bit. You need really good sales skills. So having lots of conversations with no agenda, with no, I'm going to twist their arm, with the right people and the wrong people, as a lesson in life, it's been the best lesson ever. And so I'll talk to anybody. It's hard to manage that, because when you talk to everybody, you have all of these relationships that it's physically difficult to sustain. There's a stat that you can only sustain about 150 relationships. So when I'm having conversations, say, I get overrun really easy. If I look at my WhatsApp this morning, God, that was a mistake giving out my number to everybody. I don't think you see that, right? That's my WhatsApps this morning, 948, right? And I try and clear that every morning, every night, 948. That was a terrible mistake. So much access. But I get WhatsApps from people saying, Dean, I just spoke to this person. Can you help them? Or I'll get, our company's looking to do this. And I get all of these opportunities. The painful thing is I didn't save most of these numbers. So they send me messages. I have no idea whose number it is. I have to Google my emails to figure out who the number is. Or look at the profile picture on the WhatsApp and see if I can recognize who it is. But look, if I could give you one piece of advice, beyond building systems and all that stuff, that's very important, way more important than content, by the way, that you build a system to convert off LinkedIn. And I'm not talking about spamming. I'm talking about building a system to get people nurtured and hooked into wanting to buy from you. Demand creation. If you want to talk about that, you can do, message me. But there's all that. That's the foundations. You need that. That's a foundation. If you haven't got that, you're building on sand. You need a foundation, and that's systems and processes to get you clients predictably. But then if I had some advice on top of that, just go and try and start. I hate the term virtual coffees, but it's a good way for us to both be on the same page. I hate the phrase virtual coffees, but just go and have a whole load of virtual coffees with people. Yeah, it might seem like a waste of time. It really might. But my experience has been a percentage of them pay off, and they pay off big time. And that's the truth. So I've had probably 10 or so encounters like that where I didn't see something coming. I just had what seemed like random conversations with people who didn't have any ability or any interest in buying. But they've actually netted the most money. They've actually become the best opportunities and the best clients. So I would absolutely go, how could I start 10 conversations with no agenda today? Or even two conversations a day. Block 15 minutes in your diary, and just people who you've been connected with for a little while, and maybe you don't know them very well. You just go, hey, no agenda, but we're connected. I'd love to kind of do, if you want to say virtual coffee, do a virtual coffee. Some will not be interested, and that's cool. You're not trying to sell anything. You're just literally going, I understand the power of relationship. And if you know who I am and I know who you are, something might happen down the road. So there's no real hideous agenda other than, the stars might align in the future. But you'd be surprised if you have enough conversations, if you consistently have enough conversations. And bear in mind, by the way, I'm a bit of an introvert. I get really comfortable doing this kind of stuff, but meeting people back when my first one, I had to go and meet them in person. That was horrid. I hated it. But I knew the power of relationship, and you should know the power of relationship. So go and put 15 minutes in your diary and go, do you know what? I'm just going to try and start some conversations and see if I can just have some virtual coffees and make it a mini strategy to just do that. If you had 2 or 3 of those a week, virtual coffees, 20 minutes, just what do you do? What does I do? And chewing the fat a little bit, right? You have no idea where that would go, but 2 or 3 of those a week could be 150 people. And one of those could be life-changing. And that's why I always believe you're only one conversation away from changing your life, because that's happened for me. And it's happened multiple times. It's not just a one-off thing. And people say, oh, well, it's luck. Well, it is luck if you're open to having conversations. You get a lot luckier if you're open to having more conversations. So is it luck, or is it just I'm having lots of conversations just with no agenda and seeing what happens? But you're a lot luckier the more conversations you have. So that's my 2 cents today. Hope it's been helpful. I think the best thing you can do is go and start some conversations and just say, I know this sounds a bit, you could even just be honest with people. I know this sounds random. I've got no sales agenda. I just believe like power of relationship and getting to know people. And maybe I can help you sometime in the future, or you could help me sometimes in the future. No sales agenda. Do you want to have a 20-minute coffee intro call? It can be that simple. And just send that to a couple of people each day. Engage with it. If they're posting, engage something and then send it. And 150 conversations later, I bet you've made a lot more money than you thought. It's worked for me, worked for you. Right, I'm off to Exeter today. I've got a group of marketing managers. I'm going to be talking about getting leads and clients from company pages organically. So that's what I'm going to be up to today. So have a great day, and I'll probably try and post a little bit later as well. So see you later.